How do you think about yourself? Who would you say that you really are? Would you say that you're just a physical being, a physical body that exists? Or is there more to you than that? I think we all know, don't we, that we think and we have emotions, and there's more to us than just being a physical body. Because if parts of our physical body are removed, we're still the same person. Now, I know in medicine, and I know the research shows that around about 50 to 80% of consultations that we have in GP surgeries where a physical problem is presented actually have something else going on in the background behind it, something that's linked with emotions or thinking or at a spiritual level. So it's important that we think about ourselves as whole people, not just physical bodies, but people who have we think and we have emotions and we have a will, and we have a spirit. We are a spirit being living in a body. Now, I'd like to give you an example of a patient that I saw, because I think she illustrated really well how it's important to think about what's going on in the background when we're thinking about our health and well-being. And she came to see me because of having frequent flare-ups of her ulcerative colitis. Now, ulcerative colitis is an inflammation of the bowel, which is serious. It can be very serious. It causes really quite marked problems. Patients often end up in hospital because of flare-ups, and often on medication that's quite unpleasant to take, and can have side effects. So this lady was getting more and more frequent flare-ups of her inflammatory bowel condition. And so she'd come to see me, and I was asking her how she felt about it. And she told me how she felt really angry and frustrated with herself. She felt really cross with herself that this was happening, and she felt irritated and angry that this was interfering with her life. And she actually told me that she got to the point where she didn't actually like herself very much because she felt she couldn't do the things her friends were doing, and she didn't like the way that her body was. So we talked about that a little bit, and I suggested it might be helpful to get some help with that, and she agreed. And so she went to see a counsellor, and she had 8 sessions looking at value and self-esteem and self-worth, how she saw herself. And she worked really hard actually at putting into practice some of the things that she was learning about how she thought and how she looked at herself and how she talked about herself. And the really interesting thing to me was at the end of that, she noticed that actually her physical symptoms had been loads better. And that persisted. And she actually managed to reduce her medication. So a change in how she spoke, how she saw herself, how she valued herself resulted in a physical improvement in her condition. And that's something that I've seen again and again over the years, that actually addressing what's really behind something, what's really going on in the background, makes a huge difference to the problem that the patient is actually coming with. So today's top tip when we're thinking about our health is be willing to think about what's going on in the background. Be willing to think outside the physical box that we tend to get so trapped in the West, and start to think about what's going on behind the scenes. What am I thinking about? What am I speaking out? What am I really believing? What might there be going on that I could address that could have an impact on the physical problem that I'm experiencing? Because we know that often there's a link. Often there are things going on that aren't obvious. To take time to look behind the scenes and dare to look, dare to be willing to consider things that maybe you'd never considered before. And that can bring about a real wholeness and well-being that you may never have if you just look at the physical.